thought I had the perfect marriage. 10 years together, 2 kids, a house full of memories, and a wife I trusted with my whole soul. She kissed me goodbye at the airport, said it was just another business trick. I believed her. For years I believed every word, every smile, every gift she brought back. But love can hide the ugliest truths. And when I finally uncovered hers, it was already too late.
I used to believe in things like meant to be. You know, soulmates, timing, fate, all that. Not in the fairy tale kind of way, just in the way you believe a key was made for a lock. And she was that key. Or I was. I don't know anymore. We met broke. I had a rusted out Honda. She had student loans the size of a mortgage. And we both thought diner coffee was a luxury. But we were rich in all the ways that mattered then. Time, touch, trust. We were stupidly, gloriously in love. She laughed at my bad jokes. I memorized the way her hair smelled after the rain. We had nothing, but we had us. And God, I thought that was unbreakable. We got married in a courthouse on a Wednesday. No fancy dress, no guests, just us and a city clerk who barely looked up from her paperwork. She wore a navy blue dress she found in a thrift store. I still remember how her eyes looked that morning. Bright, alive, like she was walking into the rest of her life with me and couldn't wait. We rented a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin. The radiator hissed like it held grudges. We made love with the TV on low and laughed every time the neighbors argued about their dog. Then came work, bills, promotions, children. She rose fast. I was proud, truly. I watched her go from cubicle to corner office in 4 years. She was brilliant, magnetic, the kind of woman who walks into a room and makes every fluorescent light flicker a little brighter. She never made me feel small. Not once. Even when her paycheck tripled mine. Even when she started flying out of state for meetings, conferences, seminars. I stayed home more. Picked up the kids from school, cooked, fixed the leaky sink. She'd return from her trips with gifts, small things. A tie I'd never buy for myself, a local jam, a handwritten postcard with a dumb joke only we'd get. She always kissed me long when she came back, like she was trying to make up for every hour she'd been gone. I never questioned her. Not once, because love in my head was synonymous with trust, and I trusted her with the deepest parts of me.
I told myself we were still the same us, just with more responsibilities, less spontaneity. But sometimes, in the quiet, when the house was asleep and I was folding laundry at midnight, I'd wonder, when was the last time we just talked? Really talked. Not about the kids, not about schedules, not about whether we have almond milk or if the plumber's coming on Tuesday, but talked about us, about what we still dream of, what we still crave, what we still fear. I ignored the distance when it showed up in small ways. When her eyes stopped lingering, when her hugs felt like obligation, not instinct. When she started saying, "I'm just tired," more than she said, "I love you." And I believed her because I wanted to, because the alternative was unthinkable. But love, real love, isn't blind. It just closes its eyes for a while and prays it's wrong. I'm writing this now because I need to tell this story. Not for sympathy, not for vengeance, but because once upon a time, I was the happiest man in the world. And maybe if I lay it all out, piece by piece, I can understand how I went from we to whatever this is now.
The first time she left for a work trip, I remember standing in the airport drop-off lane, my fingers still brushing the soft cotton of her scarf as she kissed my cheek and said, "It's just 3 nights, babe." 3 nights. I went home and slept on her side of the bed. It wasn't a big deal. People travel for work all the time. I even felt proud. She was being flown out to speak at a conference in Denver. Panel discussion, industry leaders. My wife on a panel. My wife. The kids missed her, of course. Our son, who was 4 then, kept asking if planes could bring back toys. Our daughter just clung to my leg more. I told them Mom was doing important things. She's helping grown-ups make big decisions, I'd say. It made me sound like I knew what I was doing. She called every night, FaceTimed with the kids, with me, told me about the hotel gym, the view from the 14th floor, the too salty room service pasta. I watched her laugh through my phone screen and thought, God, I'm lucky. That first trip, she came back with tiny snow globes for the kids and a t-shirt for me that said, Denver, mile high and worth it. She laughed when I raised an eyebrow. I know it's cheesy, she said, but you like bad jokes, remember? I still wear that shirt when I paint the garage. After Denver, it became more regular. Not constant, not alarming, just part of the rhythm of our life. A week in Chicago, 3 days in Austin, a Monday to Friday in Boston that turned into Sunday to Saturday. Sometimes she'd text late at night, miss your arms around me. Sometimes nothing at all, until morning. I didn't question it. I told myself, she's tired. She's working hard. She's doing this for us. And I believed it, because back then, love was still the lens I saw everything through, even silence.
The house settled into a new normal. I got good at packing school lunches, at brushing hair into ponytails, at knowing which socks matched which moods. The kids and I had our little routines. Friday pizza night, morning tickle fights, bedtime stories that turned into marathon Q&A sessions about space, dinosaurs, and why adults cry. She always made it back for birthdays, never missed an anniversary, brought home flowers, small gifts, souvenirs from duty-free stores. I remember once, this sticks with me, she brought me a pen, a sleek, expensive thing, heavy in the hand. Said it reminded her of me. I didn't ask why. I just smiled, kissed her, and placed it in the drawer where I kept things that mattered. Over time, the goodbyes got shorter, the hugs quicker, the eye contact less lingering. But I chalked it up to life, to fatigue, to kids, to adulthood. We were a team, I thought, a well-oiled machine. And yet every time I stood in that airport drop-off lane, something started to ache. A small, gnawing question I couldn't quite name. One night, she came home late, past midnight. The flight had been delayed. I stayed up, made her tea. She kissed me, thanked me, said she was exhausted. Then she stood in the doorway of the bedroom and said, almost to herself, "This don't feel like home anymore." I asked what she meant. She laughed it off, said she was just tired, that hotel beds ruin your back, that she missed the kids. But the words stayed. They moved in like quiet tenants in the back of my mind, rearranging furniture, whispering things I didn't want to hear.
I started noticing small things. A new perfume that wasn't her usual. A hotel receipt she left in the pocket of a blazer for 2 guests. A second phone charger in her luggage. But I told myself stories. I spun them with the grace of a man who wants to believe. Of course she carries 2 chargers, one for work, one for home. Of course she had dinner with someone. Networking, right? Because if you build a life on trust, it becomes the scaffolding for every thought. And if that scaffolding starts to creak, you pray it's just the wind. Still, we laughed. We had sex. Less often, yes, but still tender, still close. We took family pictures in the fall, her arm wrapped around my waist, smile wide and warm. To anyone looking, we were perfect, even to me sometimes. But at night, lying next to her, I started feeling like the distance between our bodies wasn't measured in inches anymore. It was measured in miles, in cities I couldn't pronounce, in hotel rooms I'd never see. And I was still folding laundry at midnight, whispering "I love you" into the quiet, hoping it could echo far enough to reach wherever she was. I didn't know it then, but the woman I kissed goodbye at the terminal wasn't always flying away from me. Sometimes she was flying to someone else. But that's a chapter I wasn't ready to read yet. Not then.
They say every relationship has a rhythm, a give and take, a kind of internal gravity where each person pulls and yields in just the right measure so that the orbit holds. But at some point, I stopped feeling weightless around her and started feeling like the one being dragged. It didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, like gaining weight, 1 pound at a time, until one day you don't recognize your own reflection. She didn't change overnight. She just tilted. Subtle shifts in posture, less eye contact, more silences after simple questions. I asked her once over dinner how her trip went. She blinked, paused, said, "You wouldn't understand. It's all just corporate politics." Then she changed the subject. She started dressing differently. Sleek, tailored, blazers with clean lines, heels sharp enough to pierce glass, perfume that lingered in hallways after she left, her voice on phone calls, confident, brisk, clipped in ways that said, "I'm important. I don't have time for nonsense." And she was important. People emailed her at 11 p.m. Her name was listed on white papers. She was quoted in magazines I didn't even subscribe to. Meanwhile, I was budgeting groceries and unclogging the bathtub drain, fixing wobbly chairs, folding another week's worth of small mismatched socks, becoming, in slow degrees, invisible. I told myself this was partnership, that every team has roles,
that we were simply leaning into ours. But it started to feel like I was the background music in her highlight reel. There's this moment I remember, nothing dramatic, just a Tuesday. She came home late. I'd cooked. Kids were asleep. Candle on the table, still flickering. She looked at the plates, then at me. "You didn't have to wait up," she said, distracted, peeling off her coat. "I wanted to," I said. She didn't answer, just opened her laptop at the kitchen counter and started typing. I sat across from her, the food getting cold between us. I watched the light from the screen flicker across her cheekbones and realized she was here, but she wasn't with me. I began to feel like a placeholder, a safe harbor, the person she came home to when the performance was over. There were moments, brief, flickering, where I caught glimpses of the woman I married. When she laughed at something the kids said, when she brushed my arm in passing and lingered for half a second too long. But they were rare, and I started rationing them like oxygen. One night, we argued. I don't even remember what started it. Something small, something about scheduling or dinner or who forgot to sign the field trip form. But in the middle of it, she said, "You don't understand the pressure I'm under." And I snapped. "You think I don't feel pressure? Raising 2 kids while you're gone half the month? Keeping this house standing while you network and rise and evolve?" She looked at me like I'd grown another head, like she was trying to remember who I was. "I never asked you to sacrifice," she said, coldly. And maybe she hadn't. Maybe I did it all voluntarily. Like a man building a house he thought they'd live in together forever, only to find she bought a condo somewhere else. That night, we slept on opposite sides of the bed. I could hear her breathing, steady and distant. And I remember lying there, staring at the ceiling, thinking, this is what imbalance feels like. Like one of us is holding on too tightly, and the other has already let go. But I still told myself, it's just a phase. We're tired. This'll pass. Because love makes excuses. It softens sharp truths. It clings to the idea that what was could still be. Even when the weight is shifting. Even when you're the only one still adjusting your footing. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek, smiled like nothing happened, and left for another trip. I stood at the window and watched her drive away, and for the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel like I was watching my partner leave. I felt like I was watching a stranger disappear down the street. Still, I waved, because I didn't know what else to do. Because sometimes waving is all a man has left when he's too proud to admit he's losing everything.
There's a particular kind of silence that settles in a marriage long before the shouting ever starts. It's not loud, not cruel, not even cold. It's just empty. Like someone forgot to fill the space between two people with anything but routine. She came home from San Diego with a tan, a soft scarf that smelled like vanilla, and tired eyes. The kids clung to her like magnets. I stood back and watched, smiling. She kissed me. On the cheek. I told myself not to notice. But I did. It was the kind of kiss you give your brother, or your dentist. Polite, fast, functional. I started watching her differently, Not like a husband, like a man trying to solve a riddle with no clues, just instincts. There were things. Little things. A password changed on her laptop. Her phone flipped screen down more often. A half-second delay before she answered simple questions. A laugh that felt practiced. And then, once I heard her humming in the kitchen. Some soft, breezy melody I didn't recognize. New song? I asked. She froze for a second, then smiled. Must have been on the radio. I nodded. But something about the way she said it felt off. Too quick. Too ready. It was nothing. It was everything.
That's how it goes. It's never a confession. It's crumbs, hints, ghost signals, like the smell of unfamiliar cologne on a shirt that isn't yours, like the second glass on the hotel room nightstand, like lipstick shades you've never seen but find smeared on tissue in the bathroom trash. I found one once, a receipt, crushed into a coat pocket, a bar in Dallas, 2 drinks, 1 appetizer, 1 name written on the back. I held it in my hand like it was a live wire. My heart thudded so loud I could hear it echo off the kitchen tiles. But I didn't ask. I couldn't. Because asking meant I was ready to hear the answer. And I wasn't. Not yet. Instead, I started noticing her laughter more. When she was on calls, when she texted late into the night with her screen turned away. She laughed like she used to. With me. The kind of laugh that made her eyes squint and her whole body move a little. But it wasn't for me anymore. That laughter belonged to someone else. One night I woke up and she wasn't in bed. 2:13 a.m. I walked down the hall and found her sitting in the dark kitchen, scrolling her phone, legs tucked under her. She looked up, startled. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Nightmares?" "No, just work stress." I nodded. But I noticed she didn't put her phone down, not even when I sat beside her, not even when I reached for her hand and found it cold. I started dreaming of her leaving. Not dramatically. No suitcase, no yelling. Just fading. Waking up one morning to a bed that still smelled like her, but was already cold. Walking into the kitchen and seeing her coffee cup, still full, still warm, but she's gone. Ghost signals. Love's version of a slow bleed. I told myself I was paranoid, that I was insecure, that she loved me. Because I remembered the vows. I remembered the girl in the navy blue dress, the snow globes, the postcards, the way she used to fall asleep on my chest without a word and wake up smiling. But the past is a liar. It lets you believe in patterns that no longer exist. And deep down, some nights, I'd lie awake and ask myself, what if she doesn't want to come back? What if she already hasn't? But I never said it out loud, because sometimes silence feels safer than truth, at least for a little while longer.
The funny thing about lies is that they rarely unravel with fireworks. No dramatic confessions, no lipstick on collars, or strangers showing up at your door. More often than not, truth slips in quietly, like a draft through a cracked window. And once it's inside, you can never unfeel the chill. It was a Saturday afternoon. The kids were at a friend's birthday party. She was in the shower. I was folding laundry, our eternal backdrop. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I never touched it. 10 years together, and I'd never once gone through her things. That's what trust looked like to me. But this time, it was different. The buzz didn't stop. 1, 2, 3 messages in a row. The screen lit up, a name I didn't recognize. I told myself it was work. I told myself not to look. But then came the 4th buzz, and the words flashed across the glass. Miss last night already. I don't remember reaching for it. 1 second, the phone was on the nightstand. The next, it was in my hand, hot, alive, pulsing with truths I wasn't ready for. The thread was short, a few days old. Half phrases, inside jokes I didn't understand. A picture of a bar I'd never been to. A hotel room view I didn't recognize. And her words. Can't wait until next time. You make these trips bearable. Wish I could stay longer. I stopped breathing. The air left my lungs and didn't come back. It felt like drowning in the shallowest water imaginable.
She came out of the shower then, wrapped in a towel, humming that unfamiliar tune again. I dropped the phone back onto the nightstand like it burned me. She didn't notice. Just smiled faintly, said, "What are you looking at me like that for?" I shook my head. "Nothing." I said, "Nothing." And she walked past me, water still dripping from her hair, leaving little dark marks on the carpet. The rest of the day was a blur. I took the kids to the park, pushed them on swings, listened to their laughter echo in the cool air. She stayed home, catching up on work. I wanted to scream, to confront, to demand. But instead, I kept folding reality into smaller, quieter shapes. Because if I spoke, everything would break. And I wasn't ready for rubble. Not yet. That night, she curled against me in bed, like nothing had changed. Like she was still mine. Her skin smelled of lavender shampoo. Her breathing was steady, calm. And I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every single second of the last 8 years. Every trip, every late night call, every "I'm just tired." And for the first time, I realized maybe I've been living in someone else's story. A story where I was the loyal husband, the anchor, the background character. And she was always somewhere else. I didn't confront her. Not that night, not the next. Because sometimes the cruelest part of truth isn't hearing it. It's deciding what to do once you know. And I wasn't ready. I was terrified. Terrified of losing her. Terrified of keeping her. terrified that maybe both would feel the same. So I did what I've been doing for years. I stayed silent. I swallowed it whole. And in that silence, a part of me died. Quietly. Like a candle burning out in an empty room, where no one notices the dark until it's already there.
The strangest part of betrayal isn't the pain. It's the clarity. Like someone wiped fog off the glass and left you staring at the wreck you'd been pretending wasn't there. After I saw those messages, something in me went quiet. Not shattered. Quiet. Like ice forming on a river. Still on the surface, but deadly deep below. She talked. I nodded. She kissed me goodbye before another trip. I kissed her back, but inside, I wasn't kissing her anymore. I was memorizing her face the way you memorize the details of a crime scene. I started watching her the way a detective watches suspects, noticing the way her smile never quite reached her eyes anymore, the way her phone was always within reach, like an IV line she couldn't afford to lose. And I felt it. The balance had tipped too far. I wasn't holding us up anymore. I was holding myself together. One night she came back late. Kids were asleep. I was in the kitchen, drinking whiskey straight, staring at the grain of the wooden table like it held answers. She dropped her suitcase and sighed. God, I'm exhausted. I didn't say anything, didn't move. She came up behind me, placed a hand on my shoulder. Soft, familiar. Hey, you okay? I looked at her hand, at the ring on her finger, at the woman I thought I knew, and I felt nothing. No warmth.
No spark. Just cold. I stood, walked past her without a word, and went to bed. That night, lying awake, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't afraid of losing her anymore. I was afraid of staying. Afraid of the man I'd become in this silence. A shadow, a placeholder, a prisoner of my own loyalty. And in that cold, a thought began to form. Simple, clear, solid. She's not the woman I married, and I'm not the man I used to be. The next morning, I made breakfast for the kids. Pancakes, strawberries, extra syrup. They laughed, syrup smeared across their cheeks, and for the first time in months, I smiled without forcing it. She walked in, phone in hand, scrolling, not even looking at us. And I realized I don't need her to feel whole. I'd built a life around her absence. I'd carried more than my share. And maybe, just maybe, I was stronger than I gave myself credit for. That day I stopped waiting, stopped hoping for the old version of her to return, stopped filling silences with excuses. I didn't confront her, not yet. But the confrontation wasn't about if anymore. It was about when. Because cold isn't just numbness. It's focus. It's survival. It's the beginning of something new. And for the first time, I wasn't scared of the dark. I was ready to burn the match.
There's a peculiar kind of strength that comes once the wound freezes over, when the bleeding stops, when pain turns into something sharper, steadier. I had entered that place, not broken anymore, not begging, just awake. I stopped asking questions I already knew the answers to. Stopped checking her face for proof of love. Stopped digging through her words like a man panning for gold in an empty river. Instead, I let her talk. I listened. I smiled, and I recorded every lie in my mind like a ledger. She'd say the flight was delayed, but I knew she wasn't even booked on that flight. She'd say it was just dinner with colleagues, and I'd picture the text thread burned into my brain. Missed last night, already. She'd kiss me goodnight, quick, routine, and I'd feel the ghost of another man's mouth still on hers. But here's the thing, I didn't flinch anymore, because once you know you're inside a lie, you stop playing defense, you stop reacting, you start controlling the silence. And silence, I realized, is a weapon. I became a mirror, reflective, smooth, empty of myself. I let her see whatever she wanted to see. The devoted husband, the patient father, the man who never asked why her perfume smelled different, or why she showered the second she came home, or why her phone never left her palm. I gave her the comfort of her performance. And in that comfort, she grew careless. I remember one evening, we had friends over for dinner. She laughed too loud at a text under the table. I watched her, not with jealousy anymore, but with detachment, like an actor watching another actor forget their lines on stage. She excused herself to take a work call, and when she came back, her lipstick was smudged at the corner of her mouth. No one else noticed, but I did. I didn't say a word. I passed her the wine, I kissed her cheek when our guests left, and I smiled to myself, because the more she lied, the clearer I saw her. Nights became my classroom. While she slept, I lay awake, studying her breathing, her movements, the way she turned away from me in bed. Every detail was evidence, every silence a confession. And in that stillness, I began to reclaim myself, piece by piece. There's a power in pretending, in letting the liar believe you're blind while you sharpen your vision in secret. I wasn't going to explode, I wasn't going to beg, I wasn't going to crumble at her feet. I was going to decide when, how, where the story ended, because for years she'd been writing chapters without me, and now it was my turn to hold the pen. The house grew quiet again that night, but it was no longer the silence of denial. It was the silence before a storm, and she had no idea it was coming.
It didn't happen in a storm of rage. No shouting, no slammed doors. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening. The kids were asleep. The house was still. She was scrolling her phone on the couch, legs tucked under her, a glass of wine in hand. I sat across from her, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt steady. "I know," I said. She looked up, distracted. "Know what?" I held her gaze. "All of it." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was sharp, like glass shattering in slow motion. Her face flickered through a dozen expressions: confusion, denial, fear, anger, before settling on something I hadn't seen in years. Resignation. She set the wine down carefully, like it mattered more than the conversation, then leaned back, arms folded. "How long?" she asked. "Long enough," I said. "Long enough to see who you've become. Long enough to realize I've been living with a stranger." She tried to speak. Some excuse, maybe? Some justification? But I raised the hand, and for once she stopped. "No more lies," I said, quietly. "I'm done being polite about my own heartbreak." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, voice steady. "You've been building another life in hotel rooms and airports, one message at a time, and I let you. God help me, I let you. Because I loved you so much, I would have believed anything. Even silence." I paused. She didn't look away. Neither did I. "But here's the truth. You killed the man who believed in you. And what's left isn't someone who begs or waits or forgives by default." For the first time, she broke. Her lips trembled, eyes wet. "I never wanted to hurt you." "You did," I answered. Calm. Clear. "And now you don't get to decide what happens next. I do." The clock ticked in the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. The world carried on, oblivious. But between us, something irreversible shifted. The mask was gone. The pretending ended. I stood, looked at her one last time, and said, "You'll always be the mother of my children. But you stopped being my wife a long time ago." I left her sitting there, silent, broken in her own way. And for the first time in years, I walked into the night. Not as her husband, but as a man reclaiming himself.
The first night alone felt both unbearable and strangely clean, like someone had ripped open a wound and left it raw, bleeding, but at least it wasn't festering anymore. The house was too quiet. Every object whispered her name. The mug she always used for tea, her jacket on the back of a chair, even the scent of her perfume in the hallway, faint but stubborn, like it refused to leave even after she did. I poured myself a drink, sat at the kitchen table, and asked the question I hadn't let myself face in years. Who am I without her? For so long my identity had been built around us, the husband, the father, the anchor that held the ship steady while she sailed in and out of airports. I was the one who stayed, the one who kept the lights on, the fridge stocked, the kids laughing, the one who believed, stupidly, blindly, that it was enough. But now the illusion was gone, and all that was left was me, whoever the hell that was. I tried to picture myself before her, back when we lived above the laundromat, counting coins for coffee. I remembered my own dreams, small, fragile things I'd buried under years of responsibility. I once wanted to start a business. I once wanted to write. I once wanted to see the world, not just wave at it through an airport terminal. When did I stop being that man?
When did I trade him in for the role of silent caretaker, loyal background character in her story? The kids asked about her the next morning. "Where's Mom?" I crouched down, smiled, smoothed their hair. "She's not here right now," I said, and the words almost broke me. But then my son asked if we could make pancakes again, and my daughter slipped her tiny hand into mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I realized maybe I wasn't completely lost, because parts of me were still alive in them. The parts that loved without condition. The parts that laughed even when life hurt. Nights were harder. That was when the ghosts came. I'd lie awake hearing echoes of her laughter in hotel bars, her whispers into another man's ear, and I'd wonder, was I ever enough? Or was I just the safe option, the steady harbor she could always return to when the storm was over? The answer didn't matter anymore, but the question haunted me. Still, something inside me shifted. The grief wasn't just grief, it was also fuel. Rage, yes, but cleaner than rage. Determination. I wasn't going to shrink into the outline of the man she left behind. I wasn't going to drown in what-ifs. If she had built another life, then so would I. Not in hotel rooms, not in lies, but in truth, in the quiet resilience of starting over. One evening, I stood in front of the mirror, looked myself in the eye for the first time in years, and I whispered, "You're still here." The man staring back wasn't the same one who waved goodbye at airport terminals, smiling like a fool. He was harder now, colder, but also freer. So, who am I without her? I'm the man who survived her absence while she was still in the room. I'm the man who carried a family alone and finally stopped pretending it was enough. I'm the man who looked at betrayal and decided it wouldn't define him. Who am I without her? I'm just me. And for the first time, maybe that's not a tragedy. Maybe that's the beginning.
The day I left, it wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no broken plates, just quiet. I packed the essentials: clothes, documents, the kids' favorite toys. Everything else, the furniture, the photographs, the souvenirs from airports, could rot in that house. I took my children by the hand. They didn't cry. Maybe they already sensed the fracture long before I admitted it. We walked out together, not as fragments of something broken, but as the start of something unformed, fragile and real. The months after were brutal. Custody meetings, paperwork, endless questions from neighbors who wanted gossip but didn't deserve answers. But through it all, the kids laughed. They adjusted faster than I did. Their resilience was a mirror held up to me, and I decided to live up to it. I cooked, I cleaned, I worked harder than I thought I could. And every night, when they fell asleep, I whispered to myself, was still here, was still whole. Time is cruel, but time is also kind. 1.5 years passed. The scars didn't vanish, but they stopped bleeding. The nights grew quieter, not because the ghosts left, but because I stopped inviting them in. One autumn afternoon at the kids' new school, I saw her. Not her, not the woman who broke me. Someone else. A woman standing by the classroom door, waiting for her son. She had tired eyes, the kind that only appear on people who've been hurt deeply, but survived it anyway. Our kids came running out together, laughing like they'd been friends forever. We exchanged a glance, a small knowing smile, the smile of two people who didn't need to explain the weight they carried, because it was written all over them. She was alone. So was I. And in that silence, there wasn't pain. There was possibility. I don't know what will happen. I don't know if love can grow again after ashes, but for the first time in years, I'm not afraid to find out. Because I've learned that life doesn't end with betrayal. It begins again in the quiet after, in the laughter of children, in the strength of survival, in the faintest spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, light can return. I am not the man I was, and that's a good thing. The past is ash, but the future is mine to build.
My ex-wife is still out there, climbing the corporate ladder, flying to conferences, living that double-edged life of power and absence. She sees the kids once or twice a month when her schedule allows. But that's not my world anymore. My world is here, steady, present, rebuilding piece by piece, with them, and maybe, just maybe, with someone new. If you've ever been through something like this, if you've ever trusted someone and felt that trust break, tell me your story in the comments. I want to know I'm not the only one. And if this touched you, leave a like. It helps more people see it, and maybe someone out there will feel a little less alone.